I'm Pip Trew. I started playing rugby at 12, so uh, I went to a high school that had a rugby team, which was even in the UK at that time was not normal for a public school, for a state school. But our PE teacher was Welsh, and he was very into rugby, so we got into it. So at 12, I started. And I played for my school team. I ended up being the captain of the school team. And then from there, I did play for Essex, my county, for the Colts, high school Colts. Then when I left the high school, I joined the RAF. And I joined very early at 16. I went to like RAF school with the Royal Air Force. And there I played for the Colts RAF Colts team. And then once I got out of the Colts, I started playing for my different stations that I was stationed at and different towns as well. Wherever I was stationed, I always joined the local rugby club as well as playing for my local team, for my station team. But that's really, and I started to, I sort of gave up. I went to Saudi Arabia in 77. And I did start up a rugby team there in the hospital I was working at, but we didn't really, there was there was only one other team that we could play against, and it didn't really last for very long.
Did you
And
play on the
anyway,
sand?
yeah, and the sand and on AstroTurf. And the AstroTurf, I preferred the sand to the AstroTurf. I did play in Oman as well, but only sevens. But that was probably 74, 75. But that was my extent in the for the RAF. And then,
What year
as I
did
say,
you
when
come to the US?
I came to the US in 84,
And did you play some rugby there?
85. Say again?
Did you play some rugby here? And this is Treasure Coast area always, right?
Yeah, no, I didn't. By then I was like in my late 30s, so I decided I shouldn't really do it. And my two sons have been born, but I did. There was no rugby when I first came to St. Lucie County, but very late, fairly early on, I think it was probably the late 80s, they started a rugby club up here. And as soon as I could, I sort of went and helped out and just got involved, but didn't play. The last time I did play a few games of in the oldsters, youngsters games. The last one I played in, I was 69, so that was probably 8 years ago.
That's a
9 years
terrible
ago.
idea. The oldsters
It
against the
was.
youngsters never ends well for the oldsters mostly.
It didn't. I got a not real concussion, but it was pretty. I was shook up a bit. So I thought, that's it. I'm not playing anymore. I realize I'm too old for it now. But that was
So,
back in 9 years ago. So I haven't played since
so
then.
let's talk about how you started the Lincoln Park Academy team, because this is early 2000s and there was literally no high school rugby in the state. So how
Right.
exactly did this, what got you going?
My
What was the
my
kickoff for this?
I'd sort of always had a rugby ball with my son Brian, Brian and Noel, and I used to get the kids in the local neighbourhood out, and we'd sort of throw the ball around, not really do anything particularly. But he fell in love with rugby, used to watch a lot of rugby with me. So he asked me, Dad, can't we start a club up? When he was about 16, he asked if we could start a team at the school. And I said, well, we could do the same as in, as we're doing in the neighborhood, just have practices and play against each other and that sort of thing if you want. But you've got to write to the high school, to the head, to the principal, and see whether she would allow it to happen as a club. So he wrote to her and sort of pleaded his case and said why rugby would be good, and how it it developed sportsmanship and character and everything else. And she came back and said, yes, you can use our fields. You can have it as a club. It can't be official, but you can certainly use the fields, and we'll help you out a little bit with equipment and things. But it's really just a club. It's up to you. So we formed a club, got the word out, and I think on the first day, I wasn't expecting so many girls because I didn't say. And in fact, I think one of the stipulations was that it had to be um, boys and
For
girls.
yes. And what year
So
is this? Is this
I
2001,
think
2002?
I think when he wrote the letter originally, it was 2001, but I think we didn't really start until 2002, and the school year 2002, and then they we got quite a few kids out, and we practiced. For the first, obviously, for the first 2 or 3 months of once a week. Um, we just got the basic ideas and things like this, and went through up to tackling. Um, but most of the time, it was like the youngest were 14, the oldest were 18, so you had to be a little careful. Um,
And you
but we
had
did get
boys and girls at the same time. You were coaching both
boys and
groups.
girls. Yeah, yeah. And
That was a that must have been a
so we did a
challenge.
lot. We did a lot of touch at first, but then started playing against each other in tackling and things, and just got slowly up to that stage. And then I think in 2003 is when it was. The kids tell me it was the same year that England won the World Cup. So that was 2003.
Yeah.
So that's when I think we had the first game against Melbourne within
That that would be Brevard Red Eye, old Red Eye with.
Revived Red Eye. Yeah, yeah, with
And let me
yeah,
ask you these practices, because I was a little bit surprised for the fact that you said a bunch of girls showed up, and I think
yeah.
we have some pictures that even show a bunch of girls. Uh, did they like play against the boys at practice, or that would be always a separate thing?
We'd play not we'd play touch against the boys, but there was
Okay,
enough that you could play like seven aside against each other, and just
okay,
every now. And I think that year we had a Canadian team come down, and they wanted. I think they wanted just a Disney World um, trip, really, but they asked if we would be interested in playing them, and we hosted them. We put them up in all the girls, took in maybe two kids, and I took in one of the coaches, and somebody else took in. So there was about I think something like 30 altogether, including the adults, and we put them up in our houses, and just
that's nice.
for the weekend, for a long weekend. And they stayed with us, and we played a couple of games against them, and we played it down by the beach. There's a field that was by the beach, and so we took them to the beach and gave them a barbecue, so they had a good time. But I believe that was the first real game that they played against another side, and I can't remember the name of the Canadian school, but they
Was
obviously
this
billies.
Was this even before the game against Brevard for the boys? This girls' game
No, it was probably no. I think it was just after
after?
that, though. There were still no girls' teams in Florida, but then also around that time, we went off to the Bahamas, and Bahamas had some girls. They're still only seven, so we did a little seven-a-side game
Yeah.
against them, and we played 15s against the boys, and we were there for like 4 days, but we only played. I believe we only played one game against each other, and the rest of the time we just had a good time bonding, and the team bonded and had a good time anyway.
Going back to this game against Brevard, because I'm just interested because of the fact that that would be technically the first ever high school
Yeah,
game played in Florida.
yeah.
Do you what did you play over there at your field, or it was in Brevard?
I
And do you
I think the
remember
first
this game?
I believe the first game was here, was in Port St. Lucie, but we then went up to them and played there, and they had a really nice field. Brevard, the Red Eyes had that, they were one of the few teams that had their own field. They had basically a little clubhouse or
Oh
um,
yeah, they still have it.
outbuilding. Yeah, an outbuilding. And so we went up there and played, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun, and all the games we ever played against them, the kids were always, let's go and play them, because they were friends. They look, and any time if we were short of some players or they were short of some players for their one of their later on when there were other teams, we could get in touch with each other and say, if you're not playing, can we borrow a couple of kids? And they would do the same for us. So we were very close, and Ray was really good,
Yeah.
and both of us were qualified refs at the time. And at the time, we couldn't get refs because there was no such, we couldn't get on their roster list, if you see what I mean. So it was important that we both could ref, and
So it
that
would
was it.
always be you or Ray doing the roughing.
Yeah, because
Did
we
did
couldn't
you
get
reach
other
out to
refs.
the
And
Florida Rugby Union in those days?
well, Roy came along, Roy Monk,
Yes.
and he helped. Then he started helping out, and he would do it whenever he could. But then after the next year, when everybody else came along, then we started to be able to get refs as well. But at first, as far as I can remember, there was no CIPP. There was nothing. You couldn't even register. There was no youth registration in Florida rugby when we first started. Um, so we just had to do it sort of off the books, basically, because there was no real organisation to apply to. Um, but then as soon as there was like six teams, then it started to get organised, and then they started insisting on CIPP and that sort of stuff.
The six teams came to be in 2005.
In
So
2005, yeah.
until then, I don't know if you remember playing any other team than Brevard and maybe some of these teams from the islands. Do you
We
remember
played certainly
before?
played we played mainly Brevard, and we did two tours of the Bahamas. So probably the year after we went to the Bahamas. It was difficult to keep kids' interest up just because of that.
Yes,
But we
of
knew
course.
we'd heard sort of rumors that teams were kind of going to be there and they're coming along. And it wasn't, as you say, till 2005 that then we started. We saw the big bloom come up, and then it took off from there.
Who was helping you out throughout these years? Because I guess it was not only
It
you,
was
right?
No, it was mainly Alan Dobson and Peter Dobson, his dad, and Roy Monk often used to come and help out. And there was Charlie Charles. He's he was an Irishman that was a minister. You know, he was in one
Priest.
of the local churches. Yeah, and he was very, very good. And Roy was a good player, and Roy and all of those three people were excellent players. Alan used to still play when he was helping coach, and Roy used to still play, and Charlie. All three of them were players playing for Port St. Lucie team, and Peter was the other one that didn't really do anything, but he helped out a lot, but he wasn't playing. But they were, they were intricate they were very, very important. I wouldn't have been able to do it completely on my own.
And I guess, as it happens many times, or sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time you have a group of parents that, even without
Yep.
understanding exactly what's going on, they like the
Yep.
sport, because of what they see, not specifically in the game, but like what surrounds rugby, right?
The culture, yeah, I've never had a parent that wasn't impressed with the culture of rugby. And you're right, yeah, they would help out immensely. You know, we used to have rosters to make the snacks for
After the
afterwards.
game.
Um, we had a thing where the MVP, the kids used to vote for the most, who they thought played the best in that day, and the reward for playing the best was to wash the shirts, which invariably meant the parents had to do it. But
Yeah.
we used to think that that would bring them down. Okay, they're get their big heads. Say, I'm great. That's good. Here's the shirts. Go and wash them. So that used to be our thing, and we did that every single game all the way through the time that we were actually going.
So nobody was looking forward to be the MVP.
No, some of them would hate to be, but
Yes,
it
and
didn't stop the other kids. The kids didn't do it as a you know as a revenge or anything like that to a player. They did it properly, and we could
that's
tell.
nice. Okay, so in 2005 is when the league like got together. You may recall a little milestone is that coaching clinic that was
Yeah,
done in January 2005, where I have the picture. Uh, I'll, I'll show it to you, and where pretty much everybody who was involved at the time with this new league showed up. You were in that. I have the picture here. Let me show it to you. But pretty much everybody from the founding teams was at this course. This was, I guess, a requirement for to be able to get that league started, I believe,
yeah,
because everybody was a coach, but no certification.
right.
So I guess this first league that came out 2005 was something refreshing for you guys who had been playing
Oh yeah.
already for a couple of years against the same and very sporadically. What do you remember of that
Yeah.
first season?
The first season where it was organised, it was much better. Yeah, I mean, it it the travelling was a bit more than we were used to, because
Yeah.
Broward is only just up the road from us. It's 40 minutes travel time, whereas then we had to travel long distances to get games. But that was okay. Everybody, the parents always chipped in and helped drive, and the same as they still do now, I'm sure.
Steve Young from Naples remembers
Yeah,
his first game was against you guys, and they traveled short. I don't remember if they still played short or you lend them some guys. Do you recall that first
We
game?
No, I don't. But if we could, we'd probably lend them something because I prefer to, play a real good game with equal sides rather than play play a team with
Of
less.
course.
So unless we just had 14, then we'd play 14-14 or 13-13 or whatever. But I think we probably would have had more than enough players then to lend them some.
I guess there was not too many like rules to follow in terms of like presenting a 23 man roster. You would
No,
just do like
no,
rolling subs. Everybody could, you could play as many kids as you could.
yeah, and that
Uh,
was
uh,
the only way there then.
did you throughout those years came close to winning in any of these championships, state championships?
No, not really. No, we were never. Our school, we were still mainly just from one school,
Uh huh.
and our school was an academic school. There was no, for instance, there was no football program there, so we couldn't rely on going and getting football players. We couldn't. Um, it was it was a very academic school. It was the 21st best school in the nation at the time, academically. Um, so
Well,
we had to rely on a lot of nerds and non-athletic people. So we didn't have a great catchment as far as that was concerned. Generally speaking, our best players came from outside the school. We did manage to get a few people to come and join, as it was just a club team. Did come along and join us, and they usually ended up being the better players.
do you remember some of these players, and do you remember any player then did they go on to play in college or in men's teams?
The one that I think has done the best was Drake. Excuse me, Drake Doherty. He was he went off and joined the Air Force, and I believe he played. He didn't play for the Air Force because the Air Force team is always comes from the Air Force Academy, and he wasn't. He was an airman,
Okay.
but he played. He played very very high up in, and he plays from. He still plays. I think he's in his mid 30s now, and I think he plays for some high team, good teams. He's probably early 30s now, but he's still playing good, um, really good, playing for some really good teams. But there was quite a few that left and joined the forces, and most of those played for in either the army or the Marines or the Air Force or the Navy.
Why was
They carried on
everybody
playing.
why was everybody going to the military? Were they looking upon you?
A lot of them went to the academies.
Okay. Okay.
They went to the Air Force Academy or the Navy Academy or the Army, whatever the Army calls theirs. So a lot of them were officer material. So they went on and played on. Some of them were ordinary um, enlisted men, and they did well as well. But yeah, so we did have a high amount of people that went off into the academies because it was an academic school.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. So,
But
and what happened with the girls up in these years? Did they continue to stick around? I'm
yeah,
talking about
and
like 2005.
yeah, 2005, when especially when uh, what was his name, Sean um, Jupiter. He
John
started the Jupiter
Simon.
Girls, I think. Yeah,
Oh,
when he came
okay.
along, and he was a very good coach, and he had his kids. Were really he. both of his teams, his boys and his girls, were very good, and he had a great rapport with his team. And when they came along, we played them a lot, the girls, and they really enjoyed it. And there was some good friendships that made in there with their girls' teams and things. And once again, we used to borrow their players, and they'd borrow ours if they needed them. So it was a good setup.
Do you recall if there were any other teams in the state around that time, 2005,
Um,
2006?
Not for the girls, no. I don't think it was mainly Jupiter. I might be wrong, but I think all I remember is the Jupiter at the time.
Yeah, the history of girls is a little bit more obscure because
Yeah,
I don't believe they actually got to get a league like the boys did with, several
right.
teams and start growing. It was always like a couple or three. So it was hard for them to get going. I, I,
Yeah,
I want to talk about because it was something that is very unusual that happens in games, which was this game at the end of the 2010 season with Miami that ended up in a
yeah.
huge.
As I told you though, I was in England at the time and had no
You were
idea
not there.
until somebody phoned me later on after the game and said it was a terrible. Um, but I wasn't there. No, it was I think Alan Dobson, I believe. It
He
was
was
probably Alan.
coaching that day.
He was, yeah, that day as I was away. Um, I believe it was him. Maybe it wasn't me anyway. And
Yeah,
I know I heard about it and thought, well, that doesn't sound right, But
it
there,
it
I
because
didn't really
because
know much about it.
you it was something really out of the ordinary, and I think it
Yeah,
just was something unfortunate. Like, and a little scuffle happened right in the game was a little bit off the bat, a little bit tense. Let's put it that way, because
yeah,
it was a semi-final, and the kids were a little hyped up, and there was a little scuffle in the wrong place, and one of our parents from our club jumped into the field when that little scuffle happened, and then like it all went crazy. Uh,
yeah.
but
I heard about it, but I wasn't there to witness
yeah,
it, so I don't really know that much about it. But I know it did put some of the parents off a lot. Because up until then, they'd always gotten on well with
yeah,
the other parents, and everything went well. But yeah, you only need one thing like that, one parent, or especially the parents, um, jumped in doing that sort of thing, that because you have very little, you can control your boys, but it's hard to control the parents, and
yeah,
even though when we used to, every season we'd get all the parents together and say, look, this is how it goes. This is rugby. There's going to be some what you think is really bad hits and things, and it
yeah.
looks strange, looks more dangerous than it is. It looks like they're all losing their temper, but you just don't interfere. The
It
referee is
it
always right.
yeah. It is. I I'm guessing it was pretty common. Even after a few years, you would have parents going to the games and still not really understanding too much,
Yeah,
because it's sort of rugby. That's one of the things maybe that is against the sport. That is, it's sort of
yeah.
hard to understand.
But Charlie, you remember when we used to play, back in the
The-
day,
In the
it was a
70s.
real in the 70s. Nobody could understand. If you didn't play it, you couldn't understand it because it was far, far worse than it is now. With all the new laws and everything, they've made it as a spectator sport now rather
Oh
than the
yeah,
player
yeah,
sport. And it's a lot easier to understand now than it was when we
for
played.
sure.
As I say, if you didn't play, you basically couldn't understand it at all. But now there's lots of supporters now that have never played rugby because it's
Yeah.
just it's as I say, a good spectator sport now.
So you stuck around this program like until 2013, 14. Do you remember?
It was about 10 years, so
12. I mean, you were there 2010 for sure, and
yeah,
2011 maybe. I
yeah.
don't think you were there in 2012 anymore.
No, I don't think we were there in 20. I
So
was
so so what happened? This is also a very common thing that we see among
right.
the teams, that basically are centered around one person or a couple of people, and then
What
obviously after so many years you
the
know
the one of the big things that happened was um, that the school at the time was building extra classrooms, and the only place they could build them was on the fields. So they took
okay.
the school ended up not having any sport fields, so you had to go somewhere else to do the practicing. And then, if we wanted to have any organized practice where we knew we could get somewhere, we'd have to start paying for the fields. And when it was at the school on a Thursday,
Of course,
we used to do up. Once we got going,
right
we'd
after
do
school.
Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tuesday and Thursday, straight after school, the kids would come. Um, you know, you were guaranteed to having the kids there. Once it became where they went home and then had to go out to practice somewhere, and then the time would have to be like at 5 o'clock rather than 3
Yeah.
o'clock. Then we'd interfere with their homework and everything else, and then it did start to go down. And also the expenses got much more it became much more expensive to pay all the fees that came out, and hiring the fields and everything else. It became a lot more expensive. When we first started, basically we just collected for uniforms and bits of equipment that we needed. We didn't need much more,
Yeah.
but towards the end, it was you had to start paying like $100 a year or so to pay for all the
Oh,
different things
and
that
every
came along.
and every kid had to be registered. So
And yeah, registered and CIPP'd and everything else. So yeah, it was. I think a lot of it had to do with expenses as well, but mainly I think it was that the school, we couldn't use their facilities anymore, and we had to go and change the times of our practices to 5 o'clock, and that really slowed down how many people used to come out to the practices. But it was, the years were there, and my son left I think he graduated in 2004. So he by the time he left, no, he did. I think must have been five that he left. Um, and
this
he
is
was
Brian you're talking about, right?
yeah. And Brian is he's one of those guys who can get people into his. They like him. He's a likable
Yeah.
guy. He ended up captaining FAU. He was the captain of FAU when he went to university, and then he played for Boca, and I think he ended up. He was certainly captain of FAU, but I think he was the captain of Boca for a little while. He's stopped playing now. He's in his late 30s, but he's still involved in. He goes out and supports Boca a lot, and FAU. He's still in their old boys network and things. But when he left, we did see it was more difficult to keep kids going because he was a good captain and good,
Recruiter.
yeah.
Yeah, you always need a couple of those. So Pip, and like looking back, I mean, I guess this participation of yours brought back a lot of memories, right? Uh, when you look, in hindsight, you look back, what do you, what comes to your mind of all the stuff you did?
I mean, it's mainly seeing the joy that the kids had out of it because they were, and seeing how many, looking back now, seeing how many actually really carried on. It wasn't just a high school. It was at least 30 or 40 of the kids that did play ended up playing at university or playing at club level. So they did carry on. Quite a few of them carried on. As I say, all of the, I think it was probably about 35 kids on that little um, distribution thing on Messenger. Um, all of those at one time carried on. The girls as well. A lot of the girls carried on playing in university. Um, so they had just as good a time as the boys, and that's what really pleases me is knowing that I gave them something that they would not have come across if it hadn't been for um, starting up that team.
Of course. Why do you think are some of the reasons rugby is not more popular?
I have no idea. It's always amazed me because to me, I
It's
mean,
a big mystery, yeah.
watching a rugby game, you think, how could anybody not really enjoy that? And especially if you like American football, I mean, it's so much more dynamic than American football, and it still has the same sort of skills involved, and only it's not stop and go, stop and go. I have no idea why it doesn't take off so much here, but it's true worldwide. Really, I mean, it's very popular worldwide. I think it's about the fifth most popular sport in the world, but still, it's nowhere near like soccer or you know.
Oh yeah.
And I think originally though it was because it was considered a very elitist sport that certainly in Britain it was
Yeah.
private school boys, or in Britain they're called public school boys, but it was always the private schools that did it. It was you didn't really play unless you went to university. You played for university and things like this. But just to have ordinary run-of-the-mill schoolboys like me, I was very lucky in that we had a Welshman that came in and taught in our school. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had rugby either. We were the only normal state school in our region that had a rugby team. All the teams we played against were private schools and grammar schools. We never played at a normal high school, but there were still lots of those around. I mean, so
Yeah.
we had plenty of options to play. But
It's really
still, I
amazing.
don't know. I don't know why it doesn't become more popular. I think player-wise, once they're hooked, they're hooked. You know yourself. Once
Yeah.
you really get them into it, they love the culture and they love the and always in one of the things about our high school kids, we used to love it if the wrestlers came. The wrestlers always seemed to make good rugby players. They really enjoyed it, but they enjoyed it a lot more than the football players did. The football players would, but the wrestlers really enjoyed it.
Well,
And I don't
that's a
know if
funny
you
fact.
found that. And we did have a wrestling team. So in the school, that was one of the things we had.
Okay.
So we did, some of our guys, a lot of them actually were wrestlers as well. But yes, I have no idea why it's not so as popular as lots of other sports.
And it's gonna continue to be a mystery.
Yeah, it's like
Why
what
the
you
best
know the
the best
second
sport?
Right. I mean, soccer. I'm not a big soccer fan, but I can see that it's a fantastic sport to watch. Um, the skill level is incredible in soccer, but still, it doesn't do it for me.
Mm.
But
Okay.
then again, there's other sport, like cricket. I mean, it's the second most popular sport in the world, but in America,
No,
yeah,
almost non-existent. I still like it even if it's a tiny sport, because if
yeah,
your kids are playing it, you know, that's just the experience that you carry on for life. And it's really amazing. As I have been talking to other people that started rugby, youth rugby, it's really amazing how most of the times it's just one guy, or very common is the kids asking to get a team going. You know, just a little circumstance that triggers something else, and then it evolves and it creates teams and leagues. It's pretty amazing.
it is.
Okay, I think we covered pretty much all we wanted, and
Okay.
I'm very grateful to you. I have a fond memory of you and your team and your parents, because our first game with Miami Rugby, our ever first game that we managed to play after like 1 year of practicing, was against LPA. You
And I
guys
do
beat
remember that
us.
one.
It was
uh,
15 to
I do
5, but
remember.
we scored a try, so we were
Oh,
happy.
that's not
And
bad.
it was, and as our first experience, to go to such a welcoming place, it really, I always remember that first game, and how everything was so nice
I
to
think
be
I tend
playing
to
there.
remember the parents being sort of surprised about the after at the end of the game, that how we got together, and because I think most of them had never seen rugby before and didn't realise that an important part of the game is that you get together at the end and
Yeah.
have a meal. In the kids' case, have a meal. In the adults' case, have a drink together. But it's still an important part of the sport.
Um, it would not be rugby if we didn't have the third half.
No,
That's for sure.
no. Yeah,
I
and
mean,
I remember the parents seeming to be very encouraged and liking that side of it.